What is up, guys? This is your boy Zilla, and welcome to today's special episode of UFC Zilla, where I'll be going down one of the biggest pay-per-views this year, even in a time of a pandemic, UFC 251. We got a stat card full of amazing fights ready to be duked out on July 11th. But before I do that, please hit that subscribe button, also hit the notification bell so you get a notification every time I make a video, guys. So let's get into this because I gotta hurry up and go through these great phenomenal matchups. So first, starting off the night, we have Jessica Andrade versus Rose Namajunas 2, and this is the fight that's gonna really decide whether Jessica Andrade is really an elite fighter or her title reign was really just a circumstance of luck. Then on the other side, we have Rose Namajunas. If she wins this fight after, Wei Li and Joanna go at it again, she's going to be the recipient of that next title shot, and it's going to be a heck of a showdown to see who is the queen of this phenomenal women's strawweight division. So now let's get into the fighter goals. What do these two girls need to do to win their fights against each other in this really tough rematch to see who is really the queen of this division to fight Weili Zhang? And first, we start with Jessica Andrade, the person that I've been very critical of because she got that really lucky slam that usually would have been illegal, but it wasn't because Rose was going for a submission. She now has to face down with this woman again after she got pieced up in the first round. What does she need to do to win this fight? And she really needs to get the hands going. She needs to start putting power and disrupting Rose Namajunas' flow in this fight. If she could do that and start getting some really great takedowns to break up the flow, to make sure Rose doesn't get to her style and start getting into the pace and start throwing the hands, I think she's gonna have a really great chance to win this fight. Plus, it's only 3 rounds, so she could give her all without even thinking about any stamina issues. But on the other side, what does Rose Namajunas need to do to get back to the top to face Zhang Weili in a title match to see who is the undisputed queen of that division? She needs to get off to a hot start like she did in the first round. Don't even clinch with her. Don't take her to the ground unless you are reversing her. Make her stand up and feel your hands. That girl has some of the most crisp punches, combos I've ever seen out of a woman. And to see her go to work like that on Andrade in the first round to lose in that freak accident is just absolutely appalling. And I cannot wait for her to put her true skills to the test. And it's going to be very intense when she does it. I think she could finish the match if she were to have that same kind of output again. But what is my prediction for this fight? I think that Jessica Andrade gets finished in the 3rd round somehow. I'm not sure it's going to be by pure knockout. I'm not sure it's going to be by ground and pound or some way, but I think she gets finished. The fight gets stopped within 3 rounds. Well, it is actually 3 rounds now I think about it. the card is so stacked that I'm forgetting that this is a 3-round fight. But moving on to the Bantamweight Championship fight, now that Cejudo has vacated his title in a prime position of his career and has left a huge gap in the division, Jose Aldo, the featherweight legend, probably the featherweight GOAT, now takes on the up-and-coming monster Petr Yan for that title. Let's get into the fight goals. What do these guys need to do to win this fight and win this title and change their lives? First, let's start off with the up-and-comer Petr Yan, who has just been viciously knocking out anybody who stands in his way. He's gonna have to fight a version of himself that has way more experience, but to counter that, he's gonna have to use his youth and speed. Aldo's been in so many wars, so many battles, that is kind of taking a toll on him. And even though he's still, I feel like 80% there, Volkanovski proved that he could be toppled by overwhelming skill and force. So Petr Yan's gonna have to strike hard and strike fast, and really that's all to it. I think he just has to be faster, be lighter on his feet, and not get caught by all those combinations. If he can bring this all together fluidly, I think he's gonna knock out Aldo. Even though Aldo I think is tough, Petr Yan, when he hits people, it's just a different reaction, and I think he's going to be able to do that if he implements his game plan correctly. Now on the other side, we had the more worn down fighter but still great legend Jose Aldo. What does he need to do to win this fight and be a 2-division champion, and the likes of the person that beat him, Conor McGregor, to do it, Amanda Nunes and DC? Can he go into that echelon of fighters and truly become a man of legend in this sport? If he's not even that already, he's already legendary, but he's going to try and catapult himself up to the echelon, the top of the top tier of fighters in MMA history. But in this fight, he is going to have to use his different skills. He's going to have to use his great combinations and prediction and reaction time against Petr Yan. They both have a very similar fight style. It's going to be tough for both of them because they're going to both swing. It's like one of these 50-50 fights that you just don't know what's going to happen until you get in there. Yan's going to have a little bit more speed. Aldo needs to return that with power and precision. And if he could do that, he can even out this fight and use Yan's, youngness against him and his inexperience in fights. Because we know Aldo can tough it out in hard fights, but we've really not seen Yan really get into trouble and try to work his way out. Aldo could keep his high fight IQ in tough situations. And if he can put Petr Yan in that position and really make him have to use his IQ when he's hurt, when he's tired, or when he hits him in the body, then I think Aldo has a really great chance of knocking Petr Yan out and winning this title. But what do I think is going to happen? It's really weird. It's really tough. But something in me tells me that Aldo's going to win this fight. I think Aldo has the more championship experience. It's going to be tough. But he's been in tough times. He's been in rough times. He's been in every type of situation over the years. He's the greatest featherweight of all time, or one of the top 3 with him, McGregor, and Holloway. And I think that's going to persevere in this fight. He proved that he could come down this weight and still dominate, and maybe even look a bit better than he was at featherweight. So I think Aldo gets the job done. Comment below what you think about this fight. But now, let's get to the co-main event. Alexander Volkanovski versus the former champion Max Holloway in an anticipated rematch. I mean, guys, had the pandemic never happened, we would have probably got one of the biggest UFC cards in Australia at the Marvel Stadium. And this fight, is just huge for the UFC. And if you really think about it, it's going to decide the future of where this featherweight division is going to go. Because if Max Holloway loses, that's 2 title shots. He's going to have to wait in the back of the line. I think he tries to move back up to 155 or go down to 135 following Aldo. Yes, it would be a tough cut, but he would have so much of an advantage at that weight. We know he's too big for 155, so 135, I think he could get there. It's going to be a little tough, but once he gets there, I think the competition won't be able to stack up against his height and his volume. So there's a lot riding on this fight. He could potentially, Alexander Volkanovski can potentially run Max Holloway out of his own division that he did to Aldo many years prior. So what do these fighters have to do to win this incredibly tough and gritty fight? And I think first we have to look at what the evidence that we saw in the first fight. Max Holloway was a little bit off in his style in that fight, and now knowing and be able to correct those mistakes, I think for Max Holloway in this rematch, he has to protect his legs. Volkanovski is going to try and use power against him, and I think what you have to counter that with is better footwork, better speed to close in those opportunities and really punish Volkanovski when he makes his mistakes and miscalculates his leg kicks. Max Holloway got in deep trouble during the end of that fight when he let Volkanovski tear his leg up, hindering his movement and really making him kind of a sitting duck for Volkanovski's power. So he has to come out hard, he has to trust his cardio, and he has to overwhelm him with volume and really beat him to the punch on some of his kicks and be more elusive in the fight. If he could be more elusive, it's going to be tougher for Volkanovski to use his power and to use his leg kicks against him because he won't know when to throw it. So the main plan for Max Holloway is to be elusive and have bare footwork to get out of the way and be a little bit more defensive and be more offensive when it comes to closing in on him after he makes those movement mistakes. So then for Volkanovski, he needs to repeat more of what he did in the first fight. Go straight for Max Holloway's legs. Try to disengage him at range. He's going to try to put the hands on you, put the volume on you before you can start tearing up his legs. You got to have better head movement and counters, because once he starts stunning Holloway, it's going to nullify his offensive output as far as being able to hit 4 or 5 hit combinations. Plus, when you hit somebody like that, you start draining their stamina because they're taking so much damage. And we all know Volkanovski's a very tight, small, and compact fighter. So if he hits with a lot of power and kicks him with a lot of power with his leg kicks, power is going to over trump speed when you start hitting him before he can hit you. And that's the thing about Volkanovski, is that he also has the takedowns in his game to wear down Max Holloway. Now, does he have the stamina? No, but he preserved it very well in their first fight. So even fighting a sharper Max Holloway, just improving on some of the timing and IQ decisions in that fight should land Volkanovski the victory if he can achieve those in, or better than Max Holloway. But what is my prediction for this fight? I think that Max Holloway, this is just a very weak matchup for him. I think he's going to lose to Volkanovski for a second time. He's going to be more, or it's kind of weird to say he's going to be more or less reckless, right? Because he's going to be more desperate because he knows this is his final chance. But I think that recklessness will cost him, or really what it comes down to, because this is such a tough fight, to say an improved Max Holloway wouldn't win against Volkanovski. It really comes down to how Max Holloway improves over his loss the first time. Can he touch up Volkanovski enough in the body, or maybe put a more kicking game where he doesn't leave his legs on the line or doesn't try to brawl too much, has a very smart fight? How will Volkanovski adapt to that? And that's really the question that cannot be answered till they step in there with each other on a more educated level than they were in their first fight, because they have the information about each other. They know what they're going to do, and that's what intrigues me about this rematch. But I think Volkanovski just has the style that perfectly counters Max Holloway's volume with power, which is, if you really think about it, he's a more powerful version of Aldo, and it's just hard for Max Holloway to get on him because he's just going to come back with a hard right and stun him, which cancels out his volume. So that is my prediction for that fight. But now, let's get to the main event, a match that I did not think we were going to see if you asked me a month ago. Burns versus Usman. What are the fire goals for these guys? This is a huge matchup that could change the whole complexity of the welterweight division. Just think if Burns wins, maybe Masvidal will fight Burns because he sees him less as a threat. Or if Usman wins, that really shows that his wrestling is beyond anybody being able to counter him. Plus, this is another fight that his wrestling might get canceled out, and he may be able to have to strike again, which adds to the legacy of Usman. So this fight just has so many implications going forward on the line, having this pandemic going on in a situation where it's harder to train, but Burns is ready. Is Usman ready? And that's the question we're trying to answer here. We're going to start off with Burns, because Burns coming this fight has been on a hot streak. He needs to end this fight, cancel out Usman's wrestling. Usman's a great wrestler, but if he wants to wrestle, counter him and put him to the ground, lay on him and get as much stamina off him as possible, because once you start taking away Usman's stamina, guess what you take with you? Take his speed, his stand-up speed. And once you start taking his stand-up speed, then there comes a problem there, because even in the fight against Kobe, he was taking shots, he was getting buzzed, and he didn't have that fast of punches. He just had hard punches. Usman is a power punching wrestler. He uses his length, and his reach combined with his power makes him dangerous to people who cannot return that level of power and make him fear theirs. And Burns has, I think, that level of power with the wrestling, I think he's a beefier version of Colby Covington, and that's what makes him so dangerous in this fight. So cancel out the wrestling, start hitting him with hard strikes, make him trade, and pressure him to death. Once he starts pressuring him and taking away that reach, having him up against the corner, maybe you could sit on him in the corner for a bit, then start hitting him and getting him in these really mid-range exchanges, is going to really hurt Usman, and he's not going to be able to adjust well to not having the range in the full range to throw power with. And I think that's when Burns is going to have the advantage in over almost every aspect of the fight at that point. So now those are the goals for him. What are the goals for the champ, Usman? I think that Kamaru Usman needs to keep the fight at a distance. The opposite saying for Burns. If he can keep this fight distance and constantly touch up Burns with his power at a distance, it's going to be making it harder for him to close in. And plus, when you start buzzing him, then you might knock him, and then once you knock him, you can get on top of him and use his extremely great athleticism to keep him down. Usman's the best wrestler, or the best pure wrestler in MMA right now, probably under Khabib, and maybe you could say one other one, but he is the top of the apex when it comes to pure mixed martial arts wrestling. He knows how to use the cage to advantage, and he does not let up off of you. Once he gets on top of you, he will drain you, beat you while you're down, so you cannot let him get on top of you. And that should be the goal for Usman in this fight. Try to catch Gilbert Burns being a little flat-footed and use his power at a distance to either grind out a decision victory or just start feigning punches to where Gilbert Burns can't predict where he's going to get hit from. And I think the real complexity of this fight is going to be in the stand-up department, because they're both pretty good strikers. They both have power, but not a lot of precision. Maybe a little bit more to Usman because he was able to knock out Colby, but he's dealing with a person that can equal him out in power but not in reach. So it makes it a very complex, equation to try to solve out which one of these fighters really has an advantage in the stand-up. It just comes down to fight IQ and what decisions they make in the fight after the first couple of rounds. But if I had to give a prediction, I think that Burns is going to shock Usman. I think he's a bad matchup for him. He can wrestle, he has the weight to him, but Usman could stay at a distance and maybe hit him. Maybe we see Usman's real wrestling ability against Burns, but I think Burns is going to cancel that out, and it's going to be a striking contest. And at that point, Burns is going to try and pressure him, and he's going to try to get him in the corner. He's going to start hitting him with those really hard punches, using the power in his arms. I think at that point, Usman is going to get hurt, and he has a pretty good tolerance for pain, but he's dealing with somebody in a different level of power than Colby Covington. So guys, that was my review for UFC 251. Hit the subscribe button, also hit the notification bell so you get notified every time I make a UFC predictions video. And y'all have a nuclear day.